It All right, trying this again. How's it going, everybody?
Take two.
Woo! So last Sunday on the VGT Live podcast, we read a essay by Jana ESP. Shout out to Jana and Noah. She recommended the Kybalion, so we're gonna read that. I think.
I just wanted to say that, so this is a book that I came across many years ago in my journey, my studies, and upon initially reading it, it was something that was very interesting, but it sat on my shelf for years, and I picked it up again, and again, when another couple years went by, I picked up again. Every time I've picked up this book and read it, I feel like I've had a deeper and deeper understanding and connection with the words, and so I highly encourage anyone, regardless if this is your first time hearing this and reading this, or third, fourth, fifth, 10th time, to revisit this text as you progress through life and over the years, just because, along our journey, the lessons we learn, we are able to understand this better and sort of integrate it better and gain greater insights from it.
So, I started reading this last week. And I know it's something that I've needed to dive into because it's something I've heard her talk about a lot. And over the years, it's been one of the things I know I was going to have to jump into. But we started reading it last week. Surprisingly easy read. This anonymously written book on the principles of Hermetic philosophy has had an enduring impact on many branches of esotericism since its first publication in 1908. Spare and concise in its language, it contains a detailed exegesis on the Kybalion, an apparently secret manuscript of initiation, no copy of which has ever been published. The book sets out the 7 universal principles underlying existence and gives keys to the principles required to achieve mastery of the Hermetic art. So that is just the little preface thing. There's an introduction, and we'll read it because last time I started reading it, we wrote it online. I don't think we read it. We take great pleasure in presenting to the attention of students and investigators of the secret doctrines this little work based upon the old world Hermetic teachings. There has been so little written upon this subject, notwithstanding the countless references to the teachings in the many works upon occultism, that the many earnest searchers after the arcane truths will doubtless welcome the appearance of this present volume. The purpose of this work is not to enunciate any special philosophy or doctrine, but rather is to give the student a statement of the truth that will serve to reconcile the many bits of occult knowledge that they may have acquired, but which are apparently opposed to each other and which often serve to discourage and discuss the beginning of the study. Our intent is not to erect a new temple of knowledge, but rather to place in the hands of the student a master key in which he may open the many inner doors in the temple of mystery through the main portals he has already entered. There is no portion of the occult teachings possessed by the world which have been so closely guarded as the fragments of the Hermetic teachings, which have come down to us over the tens of centuries, which have elapsed since the lifetime of its greatest founder, Hermes Trismegistus, the scribe of the gods, who dwelt in ancient Egypt in the days when the present race of men was in its infancy, contemporary with Abraham, and if the legends be true, an instructor of what venerable sage Hermes was and is the great central sun of occultism, whose rays have served to illuminate the countless teachings which have been promulgated since its time. All the fundamental and basic teachings embedded in the esoteric teachings of every race may be traced back to Hermes. Even the most ancient teachings of India undoubtedly have their roots in the original Hermetic teachings. From the land of the Ganges, may advanced occultism wandered to the land of Egypt and sat at the feet of the master. From him they obtained the master key, which explained and reconciled their divergent views. And thus the secret doctrine was firmly established. From other lands also came the learned ones, all of whom regarded Hermes as the master of masters.
All of whom regarded Hermes as the master of masters. His influence was so great that in spite of the many wanderings from the path on the part of the centuries of teachers in these different lands, there still may be found a certain basic resemblance and correspondence which underlies the many and often quite divergent theories entertained and taught by the occultists of these different lands today. The student of comparative religions will be able to perceive the influence of the Hermetic teachings in every religion worthy of the name, now known to man, whether it be a dead religion or one in full vigor in our own times. There's always a certain correspondence in spite of the contradictory features, and the Hermetic teachings act as the great reconciler. The life work of Hermes seems to have been in the direction of planting the great seed truth, which has grown and blossomed in so many strange forms, rather than to establish a school of philosophy which would dominate the world's thought. But nevertheless, the original truths taught by him have been kept intact by their original purity by a few men in each age, who, refusing great numbers of half-developed students and followers, followed the Hermetic custom and reserved their truth for the few who are ready to comprehend and master it. From lip to ear, the truth has been handed down among the few. There have always been a few initiates in each generation in the various lands of the earth who kept alive the sacred flame of the Hermetic teachings, and such have always been willing to use their lamp to relight the lesser lamps of the outside world, when the light of truth grew dim, clouded by reason of neglect, and when the wicks became clogged with foreign matter. There were always a few to tend faithfully to the altar of truth, upon which was kept alight the perpetual lamp of wisdom. These men devoted their lives to the labor of love, which the poet has so well stated in his lines. Oh, let not the flame die out, cherished age after age in its dark cavern, and its holy temples cherished, fed by pure ministers of love. Let not the flame die out. These men have never sought popular approval, nor numbers of followers. They are indifferent to these things, for they know how few there are in each generation who are ready for the truth, or who would recognize it if it were presented to them. They reserve the, quote, strong meat for men, while others furnish the milk for babes. They reserve their pearls of wisdom for the few elect, who recognize their value and who wear them in their crowns, instead of casting them before the materialistic vulgar swine, who would trample them in the mud and then mix them with their disgusting mental food. But these men have never forgotten or overlooked the original teachings of Hermes regarding the passing on of the words of truth to those ready to receive it, which teaching is stated in the Kybalion as follows: where fall the footsteps of the master, the ears of those ready for his teaching open wide. And again, when the ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom. But their customary attitude has always been strictly in accordance with the other Hermetic aphorism, also in the Kybalion: the lips of the wisdom are closed, except to the ears of the understanding. Those who have criticized this attitude of the Hermeticists and who have claimed that they did not manifest a proper spirit in their policy of seclusion and reticence, but a moment's glance back over the pages of history will show the wisdom of the masters, who, knew the folly of attempting to teach to the world that which it is neither ready nor willing to receive. The Hermeticists have never sought to be martyrs and have instead sat silently aside with a pitying smile on their closed lips, while, quote, the heathen raged noisily about them, in their customary amusement of putting to death and torture the honest but misguided enthusiasts who imagine that they could force upon a race of barbarians the truth capable of being understood only by the elect who have advanced along the path.
Here.
Last paragraph. In the spirit.
And the spirit of persecution has not yet died out in the land. There are certain Hermetic teachings which, if publicly promulgated, would bring down upon the teachers a great cry of scorn and revelment from the multitude, who would again raise the cry of crucify, crucify. In this little work, we have endeavored to give you an idea of the fundamental teachings of the Kybalion, striving to give you the working principles, leaving you to apply them yourselves rather than attempting to work out the teachings in detail. If you are true students, you will be able to work out and apply these principles. If not, then you must develop yourself into one, for otherwise the Hermetic teachings will be as words to you. Chapter 1, the Hermetic Philosophy. The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. From old Egypt have come the fundamental esoteric and occult teachings, which have so strongly influenced the philosophies of all races, nations, and peoples. For several thousand years, Egypt, the home of the pyramids and the Sphinx, was the birthplace of all of the hidden wisdom and mystic teachings. From her secret doctrine, all nations have borrowed: India, Persia, Chaldea, Media, China, Japan, Assyria, ancient Greece, and Rome. And other ancient countries partook liberally at the feast of knowledge, which the hierophants and masters of the lands of Isis so freely provided for those who can prepare to partake of the great store of mystic and occult lore which the masterminds of the ancient land had gathered together. In ancient Egypt dwelt the great adepts and masters who have never been surpassed and who seldom have been equaled. During the centuries that have taken their processional flight since the days of the great Hermes, in Egypt was located the great lodge of lodges of the mystics. At the doors of her temple entered the neophytes, who afterwards, as hierophants, adepts, and masters, traveled to the four corners of the earth, carrying with them the precious knowledge which they were ready, anxious, and willing to pass on to those who were ready to receive the same. All students of the occult recognize the debt that they owe to these venerable masters of that ancient land.
But among these great masters of ancient Egypt, there once dwelt one of whom masters hailed as the master of masters. This man, if man indeed he was, dwelt in Egypt in the earliest days. He was known as Hermes Trismegistus. He was the father of the occult wisdom, the founder of astrology, the discoverer of alchemy. The details of his life story are lost to history owing to the lapse of the years, though several of the ancient countries disputed with each other in their claims to the honor of having furnished his birthplace, and this thousands of years ago. The date of his sojourn in Egypt and that his last incarnation on this planet is not now known, but it has been fixed at the early days of the oldest dynasties of Egypt, long before the days of Moses. The best authorities regard him as a contemporary of Abraham, and some of the Jewish traditions go so far as to claim that Abraham acquired a portion of his mystic knowledge from Hermes himself. As the years rolled by, after his passing from this plane of life, tradition recording that he lived 300 years in the flesh, The Egyptians deified Hermes and made him one of their gods under the name of Thoth. Years after, the people of ancient Greece also made him one of their many gods, calling him Hermes, the god of wisdom. The Egyptians revered his memory for many centuries, yes, tens of centuries, calling him the scribe of the gods and bestowing upon him distinctively his ancient title, Trismegistus, which means the thrice great, the great great, the greatest great, etc. In all the ancient lands, the name of Hermes Trismegistus was revered, the name being synonymous with fount of wisdom. Even to this day, we use the term hermetic in the sense of secret, sealed so that nothing can escape, etc. And this by the reason of the fact that the followers of Hermes always observed the principle of secrecy in their teachings. They did not believe in casting pearls before swine, but rather held to the teaching milk for the babes, meat for strong men, both of which maxims are familiar to readers of the Christian scriptures, but both of which have been used by the Egyptians for centuries before the Christian era. And this policy of careful dissemination of the truth has always characterized the Hermetics, even unto the present day. The Hermetic teachings are to be found in all lands, among all religions, but never identified with any particular country, nor with any particular religious sect. This is because of the warning of the ancient teachers against the allowing the secret doctrine to become crystallized into a creed. The wisdom of this caution is apparent to all students of history. The ancient occultism of India and Persia degenerated and was largely lost owing to the fact that the teachers became priests and so mixed theology with the philosophy, the result being that the occultism of India and Persia has gradually lost amidst the mass of religious superstition cults, creeds, and gods. So it was with ancient Greece and Rome. So it was with the Hermetic teachings of the Gnostics and early Christians, which were lost at the time of Constantine, whose iron hand smothered philosophy with the blanket of theology, losing to the Christian church that which was its very essence and spirit, causing it to grope throughout several centuries before it found its way back to its ancient faith. The indications apparent to all careful observers in this 20th century being that the church is now struggling to get back to its ancient mystic teachings. But there were always a few faithful souls who kept alive the flame, tending to it carefully and not allowing its light to become extinguished. And thanks to these staunch hearts and fearless minds, we have the truth still with us, but it is not found in books to any great extent. It has been passed along from master to student, from initiate to hierophant, from lip to ear. When it was written down at all, its meaning was veiled in terms of alchemy and astrology, so that only those possessing the key could read it aright. This was made necessary in order to avoid the persecutions of the theologians of the Middle Ages, who fought the secret doctrine with fire and sword, stake, gibbet, and cross. Even to this day, there will be found but a few reliable books on the Hermetic philosophy, although there are countless references to it in many books written on various phases of occultism. And yet, the Hermetic philosophy is the only master key which will open all the doors of the occult teachings.
In the early days, there was a compilation of certain basic Hermetic doctrine passed on from teacher to student, which was known as the Kybalion. The exact significance and meaning of the term having been lost for centuries, this teaching, however, is known to many to whom it has descended from mouth to ear on and on throughout the centuries. Its precepts have never been written down or printed. So far as we know, it was merely a collection of maxims, axioms, and precepts which were non-understandable to outsiders, but which were readily understood by students after the axioms, maxims, and precepts had been explained and exemplified by the Hermetic initiates to their neophytes. These teachings really constituted the basic principles of the art of Hermetic alchemy, which, contrary to the general belief, dealt in the mastery of mental forces rather than material elements, the transmutation of one kind of mental vibration into others. Instead of the changing of one kind of metal to another, the legends of the philosopher's stone, which would turn base metal into gold, was an allegory relating to Hermetic philosophy, readily understood by all students of true Hermeticism. In this little book, of which This is the first lesson. We invite our students to explain into the Hermetic teachings as set forth in the Kybalion and as explained by ourselves, humble students of the teachings, who, while bearing the title of initiates, are still students at the feet of Hermes, the master. We herein give you many of the maxims, axioms, and precepts of the Kybalion, accompanied by explanations and illustrations which we deem likely to render the teachings more easily comprehended by the modern student, particularly as the original text is purposely veiled in obscure terms. Yeah.
The original maxims, axioms, and precepts of the Kybalion are printed herein in quotation marks, the proper credit being given. Our own work is printed in the regular way in the body of the work. We trust that the many students to whom we now offer this little work will derive as much benefit from the study of its pages as have the many who've gone on before, treading the same path to mastery throughout the centuries that have passed since the times of Hermes Trismegistus, the master of masters, the great. In the words of the Kybalion, where fall the footsteps of the master, the ears of those ready to his teaching open wide. When the ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom. So that according to the teachings, the passage of this book to those ready for the instruction will attract the attention of such as are prepared to receive the teaching. And likewise, when the pupil is ready to receive the truth, then will this little book come to him or her. Such is the law. The Hermetic principle of cause and effect, in its aspect of the law of attraction, will bring lips and ear together, pupil and book in company. So mote it be.
So mote it.
So mote it be. So that was the first chapter. I think super interesting. One of the most important parts of that was it talking about alchemy. And so we traditionally hear about alchemy as transmuting whatever metals and like making gold. And that's the most really important part, is that it's an allegory. It's a metaphor for the gold, for the mental gold or the spiritual gold, so to speak. But yeah, it was not how they taught us, essentially, what alchemy is.
Yeah. It was interesting how he was talking, the anonymous was talking about only teaching people who want to be taught and not casting pearls before swine. Interesting.
Which, yeah, that's interpreted as a little bit like, we've talked about this before in other circles of it being elitist, perhaps, but I see it not so much that it's elitist, but just that in practical terms, that it's not to be received by those who are not ready, who are not open to it, or are not in a place to even understand. Not so much that we should be willfully keeping it away from people, but that
they're just not going to get it.
Yeah.
So you're wasting time, like with people who don't want to get it. Yeah.
Exactly. Our time, our energy is precious. And so why cast pearls before swine when it's you're casting your energy and time into nothingness.
The wrong people, the least efficient.
Yeah. So yeah,
we're not keeping it away from anybody because we're reading it on the internet. But if they don't like it, they don't have to watch. But if they're ready, hopefully they'll be interested.
Yeah, exactly. Shall we continue?
Yeah. Someone else want to read?
I don't mind reading. Should I take a turn now?
Your audio is a little choppy.
About alchemy, and so we traditionally know.
Say something again.
Okay, never mind then.
Whatever metals.
I'm gonna listen to it on the feedback and
the most
see
important
if
part
it
is that
actually.
it's an allegory. It's a metaphor.
Because sometimes it'll make noise and it won't.
Catch up. You're a little behind. Click on the live. We're just testing audio.
Maybe I can try.
Sometimes it'll
with my book.
Say testing. Test for me, Jeff. Say something.
Maybe I can try.
Testing. How do I sound?
Testing. Test for me, Jeff.
1
Say
second.
something.
Something.
It's not that bad.
Let's go with
It's
it.
worse on
Go
here.
ahead, Jeff.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
try.
fine.
I'll scroll along so you can read.
The principles of truth are 7. He who knows these understandingly possesses the magic key before whose touch all the doors of the temple fly open. The Kybalion. The 7 Hermetic Principles, upon which the entire Hermetic philosophy is based, are as follows. 1. The principle of mentalism. 2. The principle of correspondence. 3. The principle of vibration. 4. The principle of polarity. 5. The principle of rhythm. 6. The principle of cause and effect. 7. The principle of gender. These 7 principles will be discussed and explained as we proceed with these lessons. A short explanation of each, however, may as well be given at this point. The principle of mentalism. The all is mind. The universe is mental. The
Hey,
Kybalion.
Jeff, I'm going to jump in right here. It's pretty bad.
Thank
I
you,
can
though.
jump in.
Thanks, though,
Sorry.
bro.
Can I jump in?
The
Yeah,
reading
go
was
ahead, Aryan.
great, Jeff. Jeff, the reading was great. It was just your
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
good. It's
exactly.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it's just it's really crackly for some reason. It might be your computer.
Okay, no
But-
problem. I'm away from my laptop. I'm just doing this on my cell phone now. Maybe that's the reason.
Maybe. Thanks, though. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Aryan.
The principle embodies the truth that all is mind. It explains that the all, which is the substantial reality underlying all the outward manifestations and appearances which we know under the terms of the material universe, the phenomena of life, matter, energy, and in short, all that is apparent to our material senses, is spirit, which is in itself is unknowable and undefinable, I think, yeah,
Mhm.
but which may be considered and thought of as an universal, infinite living mind. It also explains that all the phenomenal world or universe is simply a mental creation of the all, subject to the laws of creating things, and that the universe as a whole and in its parts of units has its existence in the mind of the all, in which mind we live and move and have our being. The principle, by establishing the mental nature of the universe, easily explains all of the varied mental and psychic phenomena that occupy such a large portion of the public attention. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, and which without such explanation are non-understandable and defy scientific treatment. An understanding of this great Hermetic principle of mentalism enables the individual to readily grasp the laws of mental universe and to apply the same to his well-being and advancement. The Hermetic student is enabled to apply intelligently the great mental laws instead of using them in a haphazard manner. With the master key in his possession, the student may unlock the many doors of the mental and psychic temple of knowledge and enter the same freely and intelligently. This principle explains the true nature of energy, power, and matter, and why and how all these are subordinate to the mastery of mind. One of the old Hermetic masters, wrote long ages ago, he who grasps the truth of mental nature of the universe is well advanced on the path of mastery. And these words are as true today as the time they were first written. Without the master key, mastery is impossible, and the student knocks in vain at the many doors of the temple. Okay. You want to continue? Or?
So that was the first principle of mentalism.
Yeah. Cool.
Should we continue?
Sure. You have any mental? Everything starts in the mind. Everything is in the
I'm
mind.
going mental.
Yeah,
The mind is all power.
Everything begins in the mind. Yeah.
It's insane in the membrane.
Oh boy. You're insane in the membrane, Arian.
Yeah, I am, because I'm awake 5 in the morning with.
You're calmer today than you are.
Well, I can get in character if you really like, but
Oh
I don't
boy.
Maybe this will inspire a new character out of you.
Yes.
I think
Hermes.
it'll be easier to sort of like discuss these principles as we go along, because they all are related. There is some overlap, and they sort of build on each other as well. So I think as we move forward, we'll be coming back to especially that first principle.
I get smarter because of my inventions, you know.
Oh, that hydrogen. Going your breathing.
Can I say some thoughts about mentalism? And if my audio is too bad, just cut me out, let me know. But it's really cool how like the whole universe is created by conscious actions, which start in the mind. Like everything besides that is kind of like fate. It's non-conscious actions. Things just react automatically. But conscious beings make decisions. We make right or wrong decisions. Every like living conscious being, like with their choices of what they choose to do or not do, like one moment at a time. Like every conscious being is like creating like the next moment of reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Word.
Word. And also just looking at the source of everything. I mean, everything emanates from the source, and that is perhaps the mind of source as well.
Or our brains are tiny pieces of source.
We have
access to.
We have a comment on the chat from Noah. The principles of mentalism explains the primacy of consciousness over matter.
What does that mean?
What's primacy? Primacy. Like,
primacy? Is that like primate?
Primacy. It supersedes matter.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Which
Or-
does
No,
make
like
sense before.
what's first thing, like primal. Yeah.
above all.
Yeah.
I can read the next bit.
She
Yay.
says, "Please."
Let's go.
All right, the second
You
is
can make an audio book, man. Audio, like
Yeah.
the principle of hopefully let's see how many errors, but anyways, the principle of correspondence, as above so below, as below so above, the Kybalion. This principle embodies the truth that there is always a correspondence between the laws and phenomena of the various planes of being and life. The old Hermetic axiom ran in these words: as above, so below, as below, so above. And the grasping of this principle gives one the means of solving many a dark paradox and hidden secret of nature. There are planes beyond our knowing, but when we apply the principle of correspondence, to them we are able to understand much that would otherwise be unknowable to us. This principle is of universal application and manifestation on the various planes of the material, mental, and spiritual universe. It is a universal law. The ancient Hermeticists considered this principle as one of the most important mental instruments by which man was able to pry aside the obstacles which hid from view the unknown. Its use even tore aside the veil of Isis to the extent that a glimpse of the face of the goddess might be caught. Just as knowledge of the principles of geometry enables man to measure distant suns and their movements while seated in his observatory, so a knowledge of the principle of correspondence enables man to reason intelligently from the known to the unknown. Studying the monad, he understands the archangel. Continue or stop?
We can review that for a second because it's going to
Yeah,
jump into the principle
love
of
that.
vibration. So yeah, principle of correspondence. I think that it's one of the main things I gather from that is it helps inform us to be able to, what would be the word, to not understand, but to visualize or have some conception of the things unknowable. So that may be things immaterial, both material and immaterial. So the fractal nature of this realm and this universe, obviously as above, so below, so below, so above, as within, so without. That fractal nature just expanding and contracting on all levels of our existence and awareness. So us to be able to conceptualize what, what the world will look like under a microscope without having to use a microscope, and then same thing without, go expanding outwards. It's just a principle inherent with everything, and both, like I said, the material and immaterial as well. So like our inner world mirrors our outer world and our outer conditions. So it's one of my favorites.
I feel like probably this, of all the principles, this is probably the most popularly known but misunderstood, because the visual representation of the law of correspondence gets misunderstood for the food chain very often. People think that it's, if you don't eat something, you're going to get eaten by something bigger, or everything eats each other. Therefore, we're just in this food chain. It's people that believe in the laws of nature opposed to natural law. Cav, which a couple episodes we showed him what the difference between those two things are.
Might equals right.
The Darwinistic approach to the law of correspondence. Everybody eats everybody, which is wrong, because it really just means
in the food chain.
It's really just the golden rule.
I think it can be recognized in the food chain because if we choose to farm and enslave animals to consume them, we deserve and will continue to be farmed and enslaved for consumption by others.
That might be why everybody's in the hospital with heart disease and stuff. They're getting those karmic repercussions of that system.
Yeah,
there's psychopaths, interspecies predators in the pharmaceutical industry. Just like we're the predators of the food chain of the species on the planet.
Yep. What are you going to say, RN?
I say that we are being consumed by our own ignorance, enslaved by our own. I mean, not we, but like majority of people who don't possess, I think, the courage. Like the courage is so important. I think they're all afraid of being ridiculed, of being attention, being called out from the mob, the stuff. Like we recently, like we're getting like ad hominem attacks in the comment section, you know, when we posted our content that we created, you know. So I think let the hate speech begin, right? Like, so it's all about, you know, people like caring less what other people gonna like trash on them, put trash on them, but it's the way that you have to live with when you go with this path of raising your consciousness. So yeah, I mean it's tough. It's a tough job, but we have to do it. You know, like I mean,
Yeah, and like
I
looking
don't
at
know
just like
if
the
that makes sense with what we talked about. Yeah.
yeah, looking at like the psychological like phenomenon of like projection, so where we parts of ourselves that we refuse to confront can be projected outwards onto other people. I think that's kind of another manifestation of that correspondence from like the immaterial, like our inner states, and then us seeing that in other people because we are lacking in that. There's a lot to learn from recognizing that aspects, just like psychologically as well, and just how we deal with people.
Right. Noah's made a comment saying the mastery of fear is a prerequisite for understanding natural law. Where you are in that process often determines what level of truth you're ready to face. And kind of putting that also off the back of what Arian has said. I mean, how many people out there are actually operating in fear, whether or not they know it or not? So it could kind of have a connectedness there.
Yeah, they are fear of admitting they have been fooled.
I think to a large extent, many don't realize that they have been.
That's even worse. Yeah.
There's a dormant ignorance there, or is the ignorance alive, but the awareness is dormant. Truth is dormant for sure.
Yeah. We had a comment in the Instagram. Some woman, older woman said like, this guy is for like psychiatric, you know, like a madhouse. Like, you know, this guy is crazy. What he's talking about? I mean, talking about theft, you know, taxation, all this. And then the other one says, what is he trying to say? I say, follow the content and then you will discover, you know. So yeah, people are, we were, I don't know, the day we decide to do this work, right, is the day we decided we're gonna have to like put up with a lot of fear from other people, you know, projection. So
Yeah.
Internal and external, though, as a comment has also been made, like, you know, we talk about shadow work and how often might one procrastinate or run and hide from your own inner stuff.
Yeah.
You know, the boogeyman within.
Yeah, like procrastinating from responsibilities to yourself.
Yeah. And your own housekeeping, your own spiritual, mental, physical hygiene.
Also, regarding mentalism, and I would say that if somebody has it in their mind that truth doesn't exist or truth can't be known, or like whatever they have fixed in their mind will affect their ability to perceive things.
Yeah, that's their lens.
So it's like, you know, fear, it's like, you know, these kids are playing in the too close to the road. That's not the kind of fear we're talking about. We're talking about avoidance, reluctance to pursue, because like Ariane had mentioned, our preconceptions may be blown to smithereens by what we find out.
Yeah, there's a dismantling of the self. There's a death of the self.
Yeah, we have this preconceived notion of who and what we are, and it's common for people to have a knee-jerk reaction with anything that contradicts that. But the problem is they sell themselves short from who they really are. You know what I mean? Like they're walking around as this straw man of themselves when they could really be encountering their true selves. And Noah said it's called death therapy or hitting bottom.
That's interesting.
Yeah, as a kid, I used to have a problem with going to sleep. I was an insomniac, but I was
Like me.
obsessed with trying to recall my entire life before I went to bed. Like literally, and I would always sleep up until about third grade, like with my hands crossed over my chest. And then when we studied ancient Egypt in history class, I
Right.
stopped doing it because I thought that the spirits of the ancient Egyptians would get upset that I was mocking them.
Contract. Yeah.
But
Breach of contract.
breach a contract, like you're not a pharaoh, you can't do that. But no, I mean, but that's the thing. It really is, fear. If you can find out why you're fearing it and explore your mortality, like it'll tell you what's important to you and what's not.
But if you think about fear, fear of what? Like, okay, you're gonna find out something, and then are you fearing the like? Do we have like this avoidance of changing our behavior because the fear brought us to change the behavior? So I don't want to change the behavior. Like, mom, I don't want to go to school. All this mentality. So maybe that's why. I don't know. Like, I don't want to do leg day because I know I'm gonna have a really, really sore legs after. I don't know how to say it better, but I think it's always hard when you find out something that is like a big obstacle for you to evolve. But
yeah, it's a misidentification with the material self. That really is the cause of bondage in karma or reincarnation, and also the maladaptive behaviors like crime, war, slavery. It's all like people freaking out because they think like, just what's in front of me and what I can think of is real, and I have to cling to it, and no matter what I have to do, I'm going to do it. It's like it's this existential panic. It's terror management, just like most like religion, like believing in stories to make you feel good, as opposed to getting to the essence of reality. And then you'll still feel good, but it'll be out of confidence and not out of fear.
Yeah.
It's almost too bad that when we were raised as kids in the formative first 7 years, we didn't have access to this knowledge and this way of being. And then essentially one is having to deprogram the programming. And there's this conflict between the world that you're living in and everybody around you who are walking that walk. And then a different truth. And so Noah's even talking about fear of death and death of the body, death of identity. I have a question. Is there such, do you all, I've pondered this. Is it possible to have a soul death even though you're still living? And I understand that, and in the context of everything that you kind of ascribe or see you as being, but it feels like at times there could be a soul death, even though you're still living and your soul's still living. An aspect of the identity of the soul, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, like personality.
Yeah.
Like personality change. I don't know.
Well, yeah. So there's things that so let's say if you consider the soul to be like the base,
psychological,
the substratum, like everything, like the ego is overlaid over the soul. The ego is a superimposition of individuality upon the soul, and then on top of the ego is the mind and intellect, and then on top of that, the senses and the subtle body of various types, and then you get to how those interact with like gross matter in like a chain, right? Like a relay. Yes, what you think is yourself can dissolve or die, and then you feel some emptiness. There's always an urge to like replace that or seek after things that affirm, what we think. They call it ego death, and that is the death of this the false self, I guess you could say, or like it's a defense mechanism, behaviors trying to make sense out of an insane world with the five senses will constantly like leave you like confused, and that's because it's subtler than that.
It's also natural, even when you think about it, that as you live and you learn, you succeed and you fail. And the image that's popping in my head is a snake that sheds its skin, or a lobster that kind of molts and then comes into a new shell. It's also a bit of a natural process, inevitably, if you're living.
Like some people that know you as a kid, and then when you grow up, they after 15 years of not seeing you, they see you, and that kid anymore you're not the kid that they remember you of. Like you're different emotionally, level, everything, so kind of, I think if you go into some knowledge that is rising your consciousness, then you can't hang out with some people who are stuck in that consciousness, and and it's kind of draining you to be with them because they don't want to progress or whatever. And so I think, of course, there's you get thick, you grow thick skin or something like that. You become a better version of yourself, or how to say, reboot yourself, reprogram yourself, a better program.
Or the opposite, like a regression. So like, I guess like looking at like death of the soul, being like death of the self by just giving into the crowd or the hive mind, and then losing self.
Yeah.
And I think like some of that is also like giving but like giving into the like the needs of the ego, sacrificing the needs of the self, and a lot of times that looks like appealing to the crowd, let's say. But that's like, it's just like in the negative sense of death of self, death of the soul.
Doing
what's the soul,
probably more common.
Right.
It sounds a little bit confusing to me at face value, because I think of it as death of the self. How could the self be dead if you're still alive to be a self? But if I think of it as ego death, and I kind of understand the ego as an assumed identity or a point of view, or a point of view that you identify with, that makes a little more sense. Maybe that could identify that could die. It could be considered a false identity or just an assumed identity, but the actual self, I think, continues to exist.
Well, because the self, it's like, at least the way I see it, like the self is like our true nature, or like what like Jung called like the individuation. Individuation is like the goal of like actually becoming an individual and like stepping into one's true self. And then the ego is like, it's also part of us, right? Like the ego is what helps separate us from, like, as kids, we form the ego to sort of like break away from our parents and to in order to form the self, but it almost needs to be kept in check by the true self, but it can override that into where you are compromising the self, which, yes, it's always there, but when it should be in the driver's seat, it can be pushed aside, and then the ego takes over. But then to the extreme, I mean, like this whole, it's kind of like a new agey bullshit idea of like killing the ego, right? Like where it's, the ego is a necessary part of us. We don't want to smother it, kill it. That's what helps us you know, it has a part in our operation, but it's just making sure it's not, again, like
It's a
in the
tool.
driver's seat, if that makes sense.
Can it
Yeah,
also be an identity
Yeah.
transformation / death or whatever? Because it could be very painful and very shattering and all of that. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. Or like an identity, like our egos can attach to an
Yes.
identity, which
Yes.
is not the true self. It's
Right.
just certain needs of the ego, which
Right.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we were just talking about the law of correspondence, and that's like a pattern that I've heard about and I've recognized also, and it actually helps me kind of change like what I identify as, or like the level of focus I consider to be the self, because like for example, I think of my one way of thinking of myself is just like the human being in the body, Jeff Hammond, who I am. Um, and then like I'm me. I'm a closed system, separate from everything outside. And the second law of thermodynamics is, you know, the entropy keeps on increasing until decay and death. But like for example, like the food entity is digesting and getting like higher entropy. It's turning into shit. You know, I need to get it out of myself. I need to go shit. I need to eat more food. When I'm doing that, I'm getting rid of the high entropy matter and putting in more low entropy matter, and I'm actually lowering the entropy inside my closed system and like preserving my life for a little bit longer. Or a ship out at sea could be the same. It's got to drop off the waste and go get materials to do maintenance to lower the entropy and keep on existing. So the as above, so below. Like think of everything as like a fractal of the larger holographic universe, where there's aspects of the whole macrocosm within every part of the microcosm. So also, like we've heard of the entropic heat death of the universe, where eventually like the whole universe is shrinking down to eventually nothingness and non-existence and totally being dead. You know, I heard something on a YouTube video the other day. It was a really interesting acronym. Maybe it's not a coincidence, but God is the great outdoors. And you can think of it as nature, but you could also think of it as like going outside the closed system. That's the only way to lower the entropy and preserve life. And you know, life and consciousness, it wants to keep on thriving and preserving and live forever. It wants the opposite of death. And you know, for one, I kind of look at myself as the whole universe, but my experience, my life, that's the point of view that I'm experiencing it from. But you know, I look at everyone else as part of myself, and you know, I don't want to create that duality and cause death of the universe. That's death of me. It's death of my environment.
I guess the perspective I try to keep is that entropic is only, like, for example, death is only apparent, as in, like, okay, so like when we die, you know, they'll be like, oh, he's gone, but like your body could be right there in the coffin. They're like, he's gone, like, but no, he's there. So what I'm saying is matter and energy, you know, they changed. They change forms. So that's none of these principles would be discussed if there was such a thing as actual permanent death, because reincarnation would be pointless. Um, uh, Giving a shit about alchemy would be pointless, right? So what it is like, yes, there's everything, you know, goes through stages of creation, maintenance, destruction, things wither away. But ultimately, like, even when like you light a log on fire and it burns, it releases energy, and
From the
the
sun.
matter returns to the air, the heat, breaks down. But
Carbon loop.
so it's just a phase before the next manifestation. Different
I
cycle.
was stuttering. You kind of saved me. I remember what I wanted to say. Like about this entropic heat death of the universe. I don't think that it's inevitable. I think just like me, I have a macrocosm outside of myself. I think same with the universe. Maybe call it a multiverse, and outside of that, I think it's something bigger to infinity. So I think it can avoid this eventually like collapse down to nothing by keep on going outside and have a symbiotic relationship with whatever you meet outside, and preserve it, make it last longer. Even if it does start to shrink down, like keep on going outside again and explore more. But even if the universe does die, which I think our point is to try to avoid, I think the whole universe probably would reincarnate. It's like the physical thing is, it goes back to mentalism. I think mental is primary. I think even if the physical universe ends, like the consciousness behind it will do something else, create a new universe. And just like when we die, I don't know what it is, but I think the consciousness within us, it continues. Maybe reincarnation, or maybe some afterlife in another universe. But yeah, I don't think death is inevitable. Sorry if I cut you off. I just kind of wanted to finish that
No,
thought.
that was good, man. Really good.
Should we keep reading? Or
Sure. Jump into the principle of vibration.
yeah.
Should I read?
Yeah.
Okay. Principle of vibration. Nothing rests. Everything moves. Everything vibrates. This principle embodies the truth that everything is in motion. Everything vibrates. Nothing is at rest. Facts which modern science endorses and which each new scientific discovery tends to verify. And yet this Hermetic principle was enunciated thousands of years ago by the masters of ancient Egypt. This principle explains that the differences between different manifestations of matter, energy, mind, and even spirit result largely from varying rates of vibration. From the all, which is pure spirit, down to the grossest form of matter, all is in vibration. The higher the vibration, the higher the position in the scale. The vibration of spirit is at such an infinite rate of intensity and rapidity that it's practically at rest, just as a rapidly moving wheel seems to be motionless. And at the other end of the scale, there are gross forms of matter whose vibrations are so low as to seem at rest. Between these poles, there are millions upon millions of varying degrees of vibration. From corpuscle and electron, atom and molecule, to worlds and universes, everything is in vibratory motion. This is also true on the planes of energy and force, which are but varying degrees of vibration, and also on the mental planes, whose states depend upon vibrations, and even onto the spiritual planes. An understanding of this principle with the approximate formulas enables Hermetic students to control their own mental vibrations as well as those of others. The masters also apply this principle to the conquering of natural phenomena in various ways. He who understands the principle of vibration has grasped the scepter of power, says one of the old writers. Principle of vibration.
Corpuscle.
Of course. So this one's interesting. Just what upon this reading, what stands out to me is mental states, and so it's kind of like a new agey term, like low vibration, high vibration, but that does resonate with this principle and with truth. Our varying mental states are in different, the vibratory nature reflects those states. So
Negative.
What was that?
Don't be negative.
Don't be negative, man. Or just like more
Bad
so,
vibes, man.
yeah, bad vibes. Just the idea of, let's say, the mental state of ignorance being low vibration. So there's that classic chart. If you look at truth as a single straight line, and our frequency is being a mental state, a low vibratory state of, let's say, ignorance. That wavelength is crossing that line of truth, not very often, but raising our vibrations, coming more in line with truth and recognizing natural law. We're going to be crossing that line of truth more often, therefore more aligning, raising our vibration, which is a positive aspect, and just how to relate it as something positive versus negative. It's kind of one of my favorite takeaways. We could bring it up, probably.
You can say that what you frequently see, it's your frequency, right?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, where did I even find that?
I thought we had it on the
Where
computer.
we do.
attention goes, energy flows.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure how many people really stop to think about what vibration they're putting out. They're just so busy living and being and doing and reacting and all of that jazz. But to understand that you actually have you really have control of your own vibrational dashboard, although different things can happen and impact it at certain times and places. You're actually more empowered, and it could be a bit of a mental thing, and through actions you're more empowered than you realize. So this is actually quite when it talks about the scepter of power, it's an empowerment scepter actually, and then the influence of your vibration onto others. So it's incredibly powerful. I don't know if that's making any sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Noah says, love is the highest and fear is the lowest, though fear is not a true polarity, but more on that later.
Yeah, polarity. Yeah.
We'll come to that one. But yeah, that's kind of the chart I was trying to describe.
Oh, what is this? Let's see. Yeah. Truth versus perception.
So the whole goal being to align our perception with truth, raising our vibration so that wavelength is intersecting that line, that white line, which represents truth more frequently. So coming more into line with truth, or aligning our perception more with truth. So like that top line would be higher vibration, vibrating at a higher level, aligning that perception with truth a little bit more.
AKA aligning with natural law.
Yeah.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
Higher vibration food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rise up your vibration with rise up.
Rise up.
And look,
Lights up.
And not eating flesh from a fearful animal.
Rise the fuck up. Yeah.
Don't be a
Yeah.
lewd, rude, crude, bag of pre-chewed food, dude.
are the colors corresponding to the depths of the I almost felt like it was almost a bit of meditation to go into, what is it, delta
Red,
theta?
green, and blue.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I've never looked at that.
The frequency of
Possibly. Here we go.
that's what I was picking up on, but it could be completely wrong. And I'm trying to remember the verbology of it all, which I used to know like that. But theta, is it delta, theta, beta? Anyways,
Like which ways are when people watch television?
it's the
Are
level.
they the beta? Or
Okay, I pulled back from it, and I didn't know if there was a guide or not.
So I think it's the early A alpha, I believe, is the highest, and then as the Greek letters get further, then you get slower. Yeah, less frequency.
you know when people
Uh,
stare
yeah.
at the TV like this, you know, Are they the waves like beta or theta? I'm not sure. Like some.
I
They
think
go in
theta-
phases.
I feel
Yeah.
like theta's the highest, but like it's been a minute since I've
I believe theta
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
is deep sleep,
that's
dreamless
the,
sleep.
Oh, yeah.
the deepest.
REM sleep happens in delta.
You're getting this mixed up.
Rapid eye movement.
Beta is normal waking consciousness, and alpha is focus.
It appears that this might be light spectrum waves.
Correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean red is the lowest of the visible spectrum. Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. Violet is the higher frequency. Then beyond that you have ultraviolet on the high end, and then you have below red, infrared, and then all the way back to like radio waves, and then on the other end of the spectrum is X-rays and gamma rays on the high frequency spectrum.
There it is.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
so you're right, Alicia.
No, it
Totally.
wasn't me. I don't take credit. I was reading Noah's comment. Credit. I don't take credit when it's not mine.
Thanks for speaking it, for putting it out there.
So purple's the truth color.
Yeah, violet's the highest on the spectrum.
It is too bad that New Age has almost hijacked part of this, and when there's such goodness, they the other side, they really do hijack this and then almost make it this mainstream thing where people poo-poo it and then move away from it when really it's right there with the truth. It's just that it's not delivered correctly.
Yeah, I think Jordan Maxwell in a show with Pasio, he talked about New Age mentioned in the Bible and how is it misinterpreted, like the coming of the New Age. I think like either Jesus says something about it or I don't know, but like there were a lot of New Ages, like maybe resets or something. I'm not sure. Yeah, so
Gotta
it's
watch those Canadians.
Yeah.
Although he's in Florida now, I think.
It's crazy that somebody totally hijacked his material and like John Maxwell, he was basically on the streets and everything. Crazy.
That's a whole other discussion. Yeah.
Here we go into the principle of polarity.
Sure.
Who wants to read?
Darren wants to read.
You're muted.
My favorite, the principle of polarity. All right. Everything is dual. Everything has poles. Everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature, but different in degree. Extremes meet. All truths are but half-truths. All paradoxes may be reconciled. The Kybalion. This principle embodies the truth that everything is dual, everything has two poles, everything has its pair of opposites, all of which were old Hermetic axioms. It explains that paradoxes that have perplexed so many, which have been stated as follows: thesis and antithesis are identical in nature, but different in degree. Opposites are the same, differing only in degree. The pairs of opposites may be reconciled, extremes meet, everything is and isn't at the same time. All truths are but half truths. Every truth is half false. There are two sides to everything, etc., etc. It explains that in everything there are two poles or opposite aspects, and that opposites are really only the two extremes of the same thing, with many varying degrees between them. To illustrate, heat and cold, although opposites, are really the same thing. The differences consisting merely of degrees of the same thing. Look at your thermometer and see if you can discover where heat terminates and cold begins. There is no such thing as absolute heat or absolute cold. The two terms heat and cold simply indicate varying degrees of the same thing. And that same thing, which manifests as heat and cold, is merely a form, variety, and rate of vibration. So heat and cold are simply two poles of that which we call heat. And the phenomena attendant thereupon are manifestations of the principle of polarity. The same principle manifests in the case of light and darkness, which are the same thing, the difference consisting of varying degrees between the two poles of the phenomena. Where does darkness leave off and light begin? What is the difference between large and small, between hard and soft, between black and white, between sharp and dull, between noise and quiet, between high and low, between positive and negative? The principle of polarity explains these paradoxes, and no other principle can supersede it. The same principle operates on the mental plane. Let us take a radical and extreme example, that of love and hate. Two mental states apparently totally different, and yet there are degrees of hate and degrees of love, and a middle point in which we use the terms like or dislike, which shade into each other so gradually that sometimes we're at a loss to know whether we like or dislike or neither. And all are simply degrees of the same thing, as you'll see if you will but think a moment. And more than this, and considered of more importance by the Hermeticists, it is possible to change the vibrations of hate to the vibrations of love in one's own mind and in the minds of others. Many of you who read these lines have had personal experiences of the involuntary rapid transition from love to hate and the reverse, in your own case and that of others. And you will therefore realize the possibility of this being accomplished by the use of the will, by means of the Hermetic formulas. Good and evil are but poles of the same thing, and the Hermetist understands the art of transmuting evil into good by means of an application of the principle of polarity. In short, the art of polarization becomes a phase of mental alchemy known and practiced by the ancient and modern Hermetic masters. An understanding of the principle will enable one to change his own polarity as well as that of others if he will devote the time and study necessary to master the art.
Nice.
It's a brilliant one. I can see how you like it, Darren.
I think it's one of the most misunderstood principles.
Which is very similar to a lot of the other principles too, like vibration has an up and down.
Yep.
And extreme.
Genders, the different genders, maybe even. Isn't there one more that it's kind of similar to? Rhythm. Rhythm has an up and down.
Is this the fourth one as it puts it out in the book?
It's the fourth.
Yes.
The fourth. Okay. So here's the thing. The number 4 symbolically is related to the world and to physical matter. And this one is highly exploited by the dark occultists to control us.
Mm-hmm.
And also the way we think or have been conditioned to think is that or even the way that the book phrases it, if you were to take this literally and try to just apply it at face value, you're going to make a mess of your life. Like if you just really don't contemplate like the deeper meanings of that, because they're not really saying that you can do evil that good may come of it. You know, it's
Right.
It's actually a Latin maxim in Black's Law Dictionary. Non facius malum ut inde veniat bonum.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
not saying that. Yeah.
I'm gonna say
Spiddly biddly bop.
Could you translate that?
Yeah, it's Latin. It's Latin. It means don't do evil so that good may come of it. But that's what um, that's the most dangerous one, basically. Like it's essentially, it's so cryptic that like sometimes we have the temptation to experiment or implement every principle that we read about or hear about. But the thing is like with these 7 Hermetic principles, when you're perceiving things or thinking about things, you can't always see where or how this principle is applying. They may be operating in the background. So a lot of the times, it's probably just best that if you don't understand where the principle of polarity applies, just to step back and don't deny its existence, but just step back and like it's better to like not try to apply a principle unless you really understand what's going on. Sometimes you don't, even though this is Hermeticism, not everything needs the application of the will and force. That's basically what I meant to say. Like, if it's raining right now, we don't have to force sunshine, because we want it. I guess this is what's exploited by sorcerers and also sociopaths, to double down on their attempts to force reality to conform with their will,
And for
as
being
opposed to realizing that duality is just a part of subjectivity versus objectivity.
Mm.
Huh.
We know so often the good stuff is misused, isn't it? It's interesting because it also represents, it can be seen. I got this image of a tug of war. When you have the rope and you have one on this side and one on the other, and you need both sides to have it, but still it's actually all one. So it's both polarity, but also one. And it's also just having that understanding. Like I remember going to somebody many years ago, and he said, Alicia, like when you're reading a book, you have a white page with black text. And so that duality of both they need each other in order to exist. And this might also be an example of that, or that both polarities need to be there in order for this to happen. Does that make sense?
That's what it sounds like, a balance thing to me. Like it's like
Right?
you need both sides. You need the aspects of each side, but it's all about you and your personal accountability, where you land and which side you lean towards in certain situations or something like that. But it seems like it's all about, it keeps coming back to balance. It's interesting, over and over again. It just keeps coming back. And then even like looking at the Bible and stuff, random stuff like that, it's all about balance, like, and it seems like the running theme of a lot of these principles is just fucking balance, and there being two sides, and you need, the work being what happens in between there.
Yeah. And that it did say that all the principles manifest on each of the 3 planes: physical, mental, spiritual, which is kind of what you were alluding to there, Jeffrey, I think. And we've got to be mindful of that. It's
I
like,
have a hard time understanding the difference between the mental and spiritual plane. I kind of think of mental as everything that's not physical. So, like, what is spiritual exactly?
You could consider them
there's probably similar. There's
almost
Okay.
the same.
Yeah.
Almost the same.
Yeah.
I think
Like,
there's some
people have
reason
different- People have different definitions, but I've never found some practical difference, except maybe somebody could say the mental plane is when you're, I don't know, like whether we're thinking or not, the spiritual plane exists, and whether we believe we're spiritual or not, the spiritual plane exists. So I think they're more or less the same.
I-
Maybe different degrees of subtlety if you're thinking of like different layers, like something more subtle than the mind, but they're non-physical, so you could say physical, non-physical.
I'm wondering if the intersection would be soul, and it's coming up as spiritual because soul kind of, runs.
Yeah, maybe spiritual. It's like the intersection of the mental and physical.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's required for, I guess, experience in the physical plane, because consciousness without matter doesn't experience the same way.
It's like the body being like a radio, you get a
Yeah.
frequency, and then the mental is the brain, the organism, and then you have a mental brain organism. You have the soul, which got like a signal from the frequency of the radio station, and you got the information from the consciousness, from the source, whatever, right? And then you broadcast the soul through the plane of your brain, whatever, like, through the body, and then something like that.
Yeah, the body is basically like a liquid crystal, so to speak.
Yeah.
Another thing I thought of, like a lot of things have like these three parts that correlate to input, processing, and output. So like the input is the physical. It's like all the data that we sense, and then the mental is the processing, and the output is the conscious action, and that's the spirituality. It's the morality. You have to decide between a right or wrong conscious action to create the next moment into the future.
Noah said it really well here. Mind is source. It's the difference between the finite mind and the infinite mind. So finite mind being like my mind, and infinite mind, the mind of God or the source, oversoul, whatever.
Finite mind is like the external hard drive, right? And the infinite mind is like the cloud or something like that. I just make some funny examples. But yeah.
Accurate.
Yeah.
That was a good question, Jeff, because it really helped to kind of.
Thanks. You all like helped me approach an answer really, really good too. It was good comments on it.
But sometimes we have to delete a lot of clutter trash in our hard drive to get the input, right? So because we don't have enough space we are all trashed, from a young age, and then we have to like filter out, from with trivium, of course, and everything.
Or there's only so much bandwidth.
Yeah.
There's a comment, but beneath that edifice of the physical construct is the vehicle for the evolution of the individualized spirit. So I suppose that would be, we're all coming up with all these analogies. You have the car and then you have the gas. Like you're individuated spirit. Well, he talked vehicle. That's what put car in my head.
Yeah, our bodies are cars, basically.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, rad.
To the next one.
It's our property, our body, our property, right? So I can put what I want in my car. So, but we don't own our cars, right? Our bodies, because we have IDs, all this stuff, and we are owned by some deity called government, right?
I don't identify with my government ID at all, so I don't know.
I know, but
consider my car my property.
Yeah, it's good. You have, I think, in the US, in some states, or I don't know, you have some common law something like that. You can say, "I am not driving my car. I am traveling," or something
Heard
like
in a
that.
car.
What?
What?
Oh, weird
Yeah,
thought.
it's the it's the time honored technique of trying to convince robbers not to rob you.
Yeah.
It works
With
like
your nunchucks?
yeah, it works like 1 out of a million times.
I think we
That was
all
a throwback.
just talked about the chain and the fence. We all had that flashback.
Chain and the fence and the dogs and the
Yeah.
nunchucks.
Mr. Ninja Spoon.
A guy with a
Right.
phone. What does he do? Does he call the cops? Or does he secure his property?
Yeah,
You know,
What's
I just
interesting?
secured
Oh,
the
I'm not
fence
going
today
to.
after I let my neighbor use the weed whacker.
That person just did a podcast with the other person that we've been talking about as of late. I won't name names, but since we all know who the characters are, those two just did a
Oh
podcast
yeah, I saw
together this week, and it's like, oh, interesting. The one,
Interesting.
yeah.
The Water Boys.
Water
I
boys.
hopped on one today. Who was it? Dude, Europa had a
On
really
morality.
good chat today.
The
Really
topic
good
was
chat.
morality. The topic was morality, by the way.
It went deep too.
Oh, was it?
Oh yeah, I saw that one you're talking about.
Yeah.
That one was just like, yeah, freaking
Morality.
hilarious.
So the person who was helping to audit, the one who at a young age like robbed stores and such, and like, why did you do that? That person who was auditing him was the one who uttered death threats to the group.
Yikes.
Morality. But anyways,
Let's
Yeah.
not get sidetracked.
Yeah.
It's VGT Live material. We're going to have a good show next week. So, Principle 5, the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The Kybalion.
Rhythm is the answer.
Rhythm is a dancer. This principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion, to and fro, a fro and infro, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and low tide between the two poles which exist in accordance with the principles of polarity described a moment ago. There is always an action and a reaction, an action and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is in the affairs of the universe, suns, worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. This law is manifest in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the fall of all things, and finally in the mental state of man. And it is with this latter that the Hermetists find the understanding of the principle most important. The Hermeticists have grasped this principle, finding its universal application, and have discovered certain means to overcome its effect in themselves by the use of the appropriate formulas and methods. They apply the mental law of neutralization. They cannot annul the principle or cause it to cease its operation, but they have learned how to escape its effect upon themselves to a certain degree, depending upon the mastery of the principle. They have learned how to use it instead of being used by it. In this and similar methods consist the art of the Hermeticists. The master of Hermetics polarizes himself at the point of which he desires to rest, and then neutralizes the rhythmic swing of the pendulum, which would tend to carry him to the other pole. All individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery do this to a certain degree, more or less unconsciously, but the master does this consciously, and by the use of his will, and attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of the masses who are swung backward and forward like a pendulum. This principle and that of polarity have been closely studied by the Hermeticists, and the methods of counteracting, neutralizing, and using them form an important part of the Hermetic mental alchemy.
Almost like I want to reread that that the last part there.
Do it.
Do you mind?
Go ahead.
Okay. The master of Hermetics polarizes himself at the point in which he desires to rest, and then neutralizes the rhythmic swing of the pendulum, which would tend to carry him to the other pole. All individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery do this to a certain degree, more or less unconsciously, but the master does this consciously, and by the use of his will, and attains a degree of poise and mental firmness almost impossible of belief on the part of the masses, who are swung backward and forward like a pendulum. This principle and that of polarity have been closely studied by the Hermeticists, and the methods of counteracting, neutralizing, and using them form an important part of the Hermetic mental alchemy. Sorry, so I wanted to reread that for myself. Not that your reading was fine. I just wanted to
So is that like
revisit that.
saying that we have to be conscious instead of making decisions that aren't that great unconsciously? Wait.
Yeah, like so. Okay, so I'm trying to just the way my mind works. I'm just trying to like visualize it. So.
Yep.
The master of Hermetics polarizes himself at the point at which he desires to rest. So thinking about if we have like a spectrum, right? And we have this rhythm swinging between the two poles. And so the master polarizes himself at the point at which he desires to rest. So let's say taking we want to stay more in the center of the spectrum, let's say. So then he polarizes himself, choosing where those poles are. So instead of like saying the masses swing, they're allowed to swing back and forth, the master will be able to sort of condense or consolidate, sort of direct where those poles lie, rather than being at the whim of the full spectrum, let's say. It's sort of like attuning to a certain part of the spectrum, and then existing, so the swing won't be as great versus going from the two extreme poles. It's less of a swing. It's more attuned, to a specific region or frequency or whatever, or however you would say it.
There's a mindfulness. What the visual that I got with that is, when you go to the circus and there's the trapeze artists, and then there's the one that swings, literally does swing, and then for some reason it all gets really timed to a certain thing, and he's a master of that. And any layman would be like falling down for sure, but he just times it just so, and everything, it's almost like time stands still, and it's like he's in control of this situation. It's almost like a bit of a visual of that in some ways, but we can all have our own visuals. I went to the circus.
No, I like that. Yeah, almost impossible of belief on the part of the masses who are swung backward and forward like a pendulum.
Keeping an even keel.
Yeah.
Nice.
Pendulum
at rest.
Nice.
A pendulum at rest has the most potential energy.
That's interesting.
The hardest to move.
Yeah.
So if you think of it like, I'm just thinking of a geometric shape where a pendulum could be hanging from, and I'm thinking of a pyramid. If you look at a pyramid, the tip of the pyramid would look like a point, and the base would look like a square. But when you look at it from the side, it kind of more like just looks like a triangle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have like the monad and then you have like the 3 points. You have the 1 point, the 3 points, and then you have 4 of those. And it's interesting because the 7 principles are kind of related to that. You have 3 and 4. In other words, the mind, body, spirit, or like basically you have the triune nature of man, and then the four corners of the earth. So you have four triangles on a square base, and then a pendulum hanging in the middle. The point of the most stillness would be kind of the center of gravity of the pyramid. And so that shape is so strong because it's maximalizing the benefit of the geometry. So like, in other words, to change the world, it's actually mostly changing yourself, and then just giving like just a teeny bit of correction or guidance to things that you have control over. Like, you've all like pushed your friend or a kid on a swing. You know that once the swing gets in motion, you really don't have to push that hard, right? Otherwise it could do damage.
Yeah.
Yeah. That too, yeah. And like doing too much can throw it and make it wobble and actually like do too much, right? So like, this poise and mental firmness, like
that's where the master's at that point of rest, like where he's pushing in rhythm with the guy that's swinging, so that like the guy that he's pushing has inertia in the direction that he's pushing, and he could be pushing and still be at rest relative to pushing at any other point in the swing.
and that's why stillness is so important mentally. You're fixed. Like, the more you know, the less you have to do, but the little bit that you do almost seems to be accomplished for you, because
adjust
the
yourselves.
principles are working. You're working with the principles, and therefore your will is more aligned with the universal principles.
Now, if you're not,
so you're not overcoming the world. You are literally just being real.
If you don't recognize that natural rhythm caused by gravity, instead, you might try to grab the kid on the swing and run back and forth, and you're going to be working a lot harder, and he's not going to be swung as good.
Or the kid can kick you in the head while you're not looking, you know.
You'd be like, what are you doing? You're pushing me like an idiot.
Yeah.
It's like, like,
Yeah, because it'll go all shaky. It'll twist up.
Well, what about the guy on the swing? You could do that little thing where you like throw your legs and it makes you swing harder. So there's another swing in that swing that you could actually do too.
When you go like this,
right,
and then you put like this,
actually
and then
infinitely.
You lean back on the chain and it like flings you up. I used to be able to do like backflips off that.
And fall on your tummy.
Yeah.
Knock the wind out of yourself falling wrong. Oh,
I still have a scar to this day from a swing.
I have 2 broken vertebrae from a fucking trampoline.
The only bone I ever broke is from a trampoline.
Yeah,
when I was 10 years
dangerous,
old,
man.
I thought I could jump as high as I could off this big trampoline. Some kid in the neighborhood had it. I had my 5 minutes to use it, and when it was my time to get off, I thought I could jump as high as I could and dive for the ground and land in a handstand. And I just snapped my wrist. That's the only bone I've ever broke.
That is not mastery of rhythm, balance, or vibration, or polarity.
Cool down, Papa. Still low your top. Yeah.
We'll read the next one. So, 6. What do you want to do?
Sure. Principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for a law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law. This principle embodies the fact that there is a cause for every effect, an effect for every cause. It explains that everything happens according to law, that nothing ever merely happens, that there is no such thing as chance, that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower planes, still nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Hermeticists understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers instead of effects. The masses of people are carried along, obedient to environment, the wills and desires of others stronger than themselves, heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes moving them about like pawns on the chessboard of life. But the masters, rising to the plane above, dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become movers instead of pawns. They help to play the game of life instead of being played and moved about by other wills and environment. They use the principle instead of being its tools. The masters obey the causation of higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is a condensed wealth of Hermetic knowledge. Let him read who can. That's a powerful one.
Yeah.
Again,
Karma.
looking at yeah,
Yes.
and looking at the controllers and being able to truly understand this law and embody this law, how much power it can give one.
The law of harm and effect.
And then it makes me think of sorry, go Alicia.
No, go for it. I can pause.
I was just gonna say, back to Jeff when you were talking about entropy. Maybe I'm misunderstanding or misdefining entropy, but just my idea of it being sort of like the measure of randomness or chaos. This sort of speaks to like there not be like the state of our universe is not under the influence of entropy, rather than this principle embodying sort of like or defining how things happen, rather than it being randomness or chaos, that everything for every effect there is a cause, for every cause there is an effect, and it's just our interpretation of randomness or chaos is merely us not seeing the cause or misunderstanding the cause, or not seeing that, perhaps.
Or as in the Gladiator movie, the general says, "What we do in this life echoes in eternity."
Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, the entropy or syntropy, it's almost like a mental snapshot in time. But the universe is not, or we don't have to think in absolutely cosmological terms, but reality doesn't just like lose things. It's like heat, life, materials, they don't just vent off into nothingness. Even if something vaporizes, like, I don't know, World Trade Center, like, trust me, that energy went somewhere.
Sure.
And it just reminds me when they were talking about this, it reminds me of the song Play the Game Tonight by Kansas. I recommend listening to that. I was listening to it in the car on a cassette back in like 2005, 2006. And it was like the one I would jam like on the way to school, like my senior year, or on the way to work. I just remember like the lyrics go like, you think there's something happening and it's bigger than your life, but it's only what you're hearing. Will you still remember when the morning light has come? Will the songs be playing over and over until you do it all over again? And play the game tonight. Can you tell me if it's wrong or right? And it was, is it worth the time? Is it worth the price? Do you see yourself in the white spotlight? Then play the game tonight. And it was like, this is when I had got like a glimpse of like cosmic consciousness. And
Also,
it kind of fucked me up because I realized that like we're not separate.
Right.
Go ahead, Ariane.
I wanted to also mention Blue Oyster Cult Band.
Yeah, they're deep.
They don't feel the Reaper, like exactly.
Yeah, seasons don't fear the Reaper. Yep. Neither do the sun and the rain.
Don't get this copyright.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things that I had written down earlier was under cause and effect. Everything happens according to law. Nothing is by chance, and nothing escapes the law. And often we have this thing where we say karma, and it's like if one kind of gives you this little bit of hope, but we're not the karmic police. And it's very curious because, and I had this interesting example, like, and I'm gonna think of a fast food. If a person is larger and goes to a fast food chain and eats that, okay, and then their chances are they're not going to feel that they're slow and tired and just feel like it's.
They already are.
Okay,
they're large and in charge.
And so they're not really attuned to health in their body in that way. But if a person who is very, the opposite of the spectrum and went and ate that X-Mac.
Definitely.
Then they were going to feel it immediately. And I wondered about karma, where if a person, and Allie, we'd had this discussion some time ago when you were talking about, there was a cat and putting the cat out, and then it came, you actually had a day review within your dream right away. It was like within hours, but some people, it was so far removed from their actions or morality or whatever. It seems to have quite a delay. Don't know if it's true or not. And the same thing with like what you put in your body. So when it says nothing escapes the law, sometimes it brings a little bit of hope and a little bit of whatever. And if it misses what we would deem to be, I don't know, payback's a bitch, on their actions now, it'll definitely be at the time of reckoning.
Everything has a price.
Yeah, at Christ's time. Yeah, the real
R.I.P. What was that cat's name?
What's it? It's like it may not be immediate and perceivable, and that's why karma's like an occult law. I mean, and that's why if these principles are not true, then obviously there's no point in studying them. But when you think like you see injustices, you see crimes occur, crimes against humanity, crimes against nature, and you say like, well, it seemed to me that person lived a good life. You don't know what that's in store for that person. They think they got away with it too, but like we don't know where they came from, and they don't know where they're going. But I doubt it. Like if you cool down the earth, that means the heat went somewhere. So if they release a bunch of actions and they haven't received the repercussions, think about repercussion. What does percussion mean? A hit. When you hit a drum with a mallet, it percusses, and then there's a repercussion, which is the snapback, right? So just because they leave this world before they get the return of the actions, it doesn't mean that it's never going to happen. It just may not happen to our perception and our limited field of perception.
That's right. That's right. That is, yeah. And there's even sound, and we talk about vibration and energy. There's even like a sound with that as well in the musical scales and everything.
Sure. Harmonics.
Yeah. And also at times it's where we have, I find myself doing this where I have to tell myself, like, you don't get to play judge, Alicia. You have an observation, but you don't get to play judge. What are you two on about? We've got the whole band.
Nunchuck pendulum.
Jeffrey, I remember you posted some link to something very interesting by Rudolf Steiner. He was saying that he had a theory that like the animals that are killed by humans so that we could consume them, they're going to reincarnate one day as a parasite within humans, so that like all of like the death and suffering that they received unfairly, they're gonna get back the pleasure by causing us suffering and death by feeding on us from inside, being a parasite.
Yeah. Rudolf
Yeah,
Steiner
so with
was well read.
reincarnation, like just like a lot of the like the Buddhist and Hindu traditions, that
Yeah, that's ancient Hindu.
that's
They
one
used,
solution. Like,
yeah,
if you don't get it in your lifetime, you're gonna get it in some other lifetime in some other way.
the
You know,
Hindus said that all those animals are going to come back and eat you.
that is so fascinating. Thank you, Jeff. It
Gonna
is
bite
so
your ass.
fascinating. We're having this conversation, and I kid you not, earlier today, like in Lisa's thoughts, it was like I literally started apologizing to all the animals that I abused through eating, and I literally put an I'm sorry out to them. I'm not joking, and like whoever's watching may be laughing or whatever, but it was like, it's through a good part of that, I didn't realize how wrong how wrong it was and how harmful it was. I just didn't understand the magnitude. And then today I was like, please forgive me. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I've done that too. And actually the word meat in Sanskrit is mamsa. And it literally means I am him.
Whoa.
Oh, yikes. Holy shit.
Yeah, whatever
That's
you,
based.
yeah. Saha is he, and mam means like mine or of me, so like he is of me. It's like literally, bro, like
Law of correspondence.
yeah, exactly.
It's like in Mayan, in Lakesh, I'm your other self, right? Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's more a greeting, like I'm your other self, like I'm.
Oh
your,
yeah. Namaste.
Yeah, like in Lakesh, like
In
that's
Lakesh.
that's
What language?
Mayan.
Oh, okay, yeah. Nice. It's very
Namaste means the
the
divine in me sees the divine in you.
Namaste. Stop being
Right,
a
you're
hypocrite.
acknowledging the divine, and then when they say like namaste, they're saying like
I respect the divine within you.
right. And then the Mahavakya, the what's a Mahavakya? That's aphorism. An aphorism is a Mahavakya, the great statements or the great sayings, and so it's Tattvam Asi, thou art that. So they have like Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, and thou art that, Tattvam Asi, that thou art. And then you have Soham is a very popular mantra in transcendental meditation, and it's also the sound of the breath. Soham, Soham. It means so hum, saha aham, and it's contracted. Soham, I am him, I am he, I am he, and then reversed, it's hamsa, hamsa, and so hamsa
Someone.
it means
Hamsa
harm.
Isn't Hamsa also the Fatima's
Yeah.
hand?
It's a different language, but it's extremely interesting how related they are. Yeah. Hamsa.
Hamsa is 5 in Arabic, like the 5 fingers.
Oh, that's Hamsa.
Yeah,
Hamsa.
with the eye, yeah.
Yeah, Hamsa. But a finger has 5 hands. A hand has 5 fingers.
Yeah.
And then also, Hansa in Sanskrit is a, depending on the spelling, is a swan, which is a metaphor or an archetype for a creature who like can dive deep into the muck and not get dirty.
Because of the oil. Yeah.
Yeah.
Based. Who wants to read the last one? Darren?
Sure.
Darren's spitting fire tonight.
Woo!
The principle of gender. Gender is in everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. The Kybalion. I think the punctuation threw me off, but this principle embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything. The masculine and feminine principles ever at work. This is true not only on the physical plane, but of the mental and even spiritual planes. On the physical plane, the principle manifests manifests as sex. On the higher planes, it takes higher forms, but the principle is ever the same. No creation, physical, mental, or spiritual, is possible without this principle. An understanding of its laws will throw light on many a subject that has perplexed the minds of men. The principle of gender works ever in the direction of generation, regeneration, and creation. Everything and every person contains the two elements or principles, or this great principle within it, him or her. Every male thing has the female element also, and every female contains also the male principle. If you would understand the philosophy of mental and spiritual creation, generation, and regeneration, you must understand and study this Hermetic principle. It contains the solution of many mysteries of life. We caution you that this principle has no reference to the many base, pernicious, and degrading lustful theories, teachings, and practices which are taught under fanciful titles and which are a prostitution of the great natural principle of gender. Such base revivals of the ancient, infamous forms of phallicism tend to ruin mind, body, and soul, and the Hermetic philosophy has ever sounded the warning note against these degraded teachings, which tend towards lust, licentiousness, and perversion of nature's principles. If you seek such teachings, you must go elsewhere for them. Hermeticism contains nothing for you along these lines. To the pure, all things are pure. To the base, all things are base.
Amen.
Ace of base.
Ace of base. All things are based.
Oh, you're gonna get ace.
Based is a new term to Alicia. She kept going, "What are you saying when you're saying based?"
True.
Yeah.
Based
I
in
didn't
what?
know recently.
The eagle has landed.
Based in truth,
Is it based like
frequency
something
of truth.
like truth or what?
In Arabic, they say al-asas, which means the foundation or on the basis of. But they also use it sarcastically, like we do. So, like like Ariana, like if I was talking to you, and you're like, "You gonna give me that $20 you owe me when you get paid Friday?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, definitely." And your response would be like, "Yeah, al-asas." Like, sure you will.
Yeah.
Sure you will.
I have a really good bridge to sell you. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Al-Assas. Dude, you're Al-Assas exactly right.
I'll assess. I'll assess your preparation.
Yup.
Cat's going crazy.
My dogs are going crazy. I think they're based.
They must be based. They understand the principle of gender.
They were reading. They were listening to the Kybalion and
Yeah,
what's happening to me?
the
I'm getting new
levitating,
information in my brain.
the vibrating.
I'm starting to decode human voices, which transfer to some knowledge, and I'm starting to understand what Darren is making from his mouth, the voices and everything, the noise. You know.
They do eventually. It's crazy, man. Like while I'm on when I have my headset on, they don't bother me very much. Yeah, like because they've seen me work from home before, and they just know. And then like even my mom's cat, when she's talking to me on the phone, if she says bye, he starts meowing, but she might have forgot and might talk for a minute afterwards, and he'll be nagging her the whole time after she says the word bye. Like, Mom, you said you were done. You're gonna play with me now, right?
It's like treat and walk and buy.
Mhm.
Or if you say during a conversation, I'm gonna go for a walk, and like,
Oh yeah, yeah. They start to freak out. They're like, "Oh yeah, I want to do that." Yep.
Our dog will hear Allie put the bag over her shoulder outside, and he'll start going crazy
Aw,
because
no.
he wants to drive into town with us. So when you
I
leave him
think
here, he just screams like a baby the whole time.
I think that animals like dogs, cats, because they are the closest to our cultural like society, all this stuff, that they are like they are like how do you say, antennas. They have like antennas for energy
Yeah.
energy field. Like if you're not close to your home, but you emit waves from your body, and then they pick up on that wave even though they didn't see you, and
You're
they
100%
can sense
right.
that you're
Yeah.
coming.
I've proved it. When I'm like a mile down the road, if I turn on my blink camera, like I could be
They'll
like a
know.
mile, half mile down the road, they'll start to get up, they'll look around, they'll start stirring, even when you couldn't possibly hear the car. They can feel me coming. I've done it a few times.
They're masters at
I
reading
heard,
body language too.
I heard a
Law of
theory that
Energy,
all
bringing
the
energy.
species have like a telepathy naturally, but humanity's lost it because it's like atrophy because we've been using language for
Correct.
thousands of years.
They perceive. They don't think as much. They
Versus
perceive.
telepathy. Versus telepathy.
Yeah, and so that's a lot of
Mm.
the Hermetic principles. Like
Mm.
that's kind of what natural law is, but in a human. Like when you perceive the way things are, you do have to conquer like the monkey mind, the constantly thinking and churning mind, in order to like really harmonize with those principles. Because language is just a tool at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. It's a learned, and obviously it changes like one country to the next for the most part.
Right, but two dogs, doesn't matter what country they're from.
Universal. Yeah.
Right.
That's very
They're
much.
all, fuck you.
And we can't live naked outside. We can't live naked outside and like expect to survive for any amount of time. Jeff, you brought this up. Like look at how actually weak we are compared to like a squirrel.
Yeah.
Well, what the hell? Well, birds, they fly across the planet without a passport. Until some human slaps a wristband on them, but
no scanning code.
right.
Careless poodles.
So I wrote down a couple notes on this one, the principle of gender. May I just share?
Yeah, go.
Please.
Ladies first.
So no creation is possible without this, the principle of gender, and all contain both elements. And so, it's interesting. We even see sometimes amongst ourselves in our micro interaction, on our macro interaction, on cultural interactions and cultural whatever, where they almost put one gender to the side. There's so many ways you can slice and dice this, which is really interesting. But then it's out of whack of what the normal balance is once this is starting to play, and it's automatically going to throw everything off by having that. It also, the note that I put on here is be the master of the game of life and not a pawn. And so maybe by mastering this duality of the masculine and feminine within each of us, we can bring out those different qualities in different aspects to our benefit, and to be smart about it. That's just little things that I wrote down.
Yeah, totally. And like looking at, like you were saying, like that dualistic nature that exists in all of us, and bringing that into balance, right? So being able to be effective both just in for our own benefit, and to sort of align with truth and align with natural law, both and again, this goes back to polarity as well, rhythm, all of these sort of intersect and correlate. But looking at like the sacred masculine and sacred feminine, and even like looking at Jung's work, like the anima and the animus, that being both the masculine and feminine aspect within all of us, and bringing that to balance. And we need both of those aspects. And when they're out of balance, sort of the opposite will sort of manifest negatively. So like that masculine, that force of creating, being aggressive, building, and the feminine force of, you could say, like submission, but be like empathy, altruism, sort of taking care, like nurturing that
intelligence.
And that
Gender. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say gender is also like the word genre. It means function. And so if you look at different words in languages, like truth is la verdad in Spanish. It's also feminine in German, die Wahrheit. In French too, vérité is feminine. A lot of qualitative nouns.
Istina,
yeah. And
it's
so
feminine.
so you notice in at least in Indo-European languages that have gender, qualitative or uncountable nouns are feminine. So it's the primordial chaos. It has nothing to do with negativity. It's the potential. And then countable nouns, they're not always masculine. However, the ones that interact, okay, like for example, how do you say a pen or a pencil in Serbian, Ariane?
Pencil is olovka.
Oh, it's different than stilo, isn't it?
Okay. What about pen?
Pen, we say chemiska, like chemistry, like chemiska, because it has.
Sounds
What about an
Google's
old
in it.
style? What about an old style feather pen?
Nalif pero. Pero is like nalif. It's two words, but
Yeah.
it's more like a it. Like
Yeah.
than
Okay.
no.
Yeah. So a lot of times, words were assigned gender in classes according to their function. So
in Spanish,
that
it depends
stand up-
boligrafo. It's male.
right, and estilo, the older style, is also masculine because of the shape of it, but also the function that it marks. Like the paper, but it's interesting that it has nothing to do with biological sex, but more like function, like the male and female. You're an electrician, Jeff, right? So the male and female tab, the ground and the hot, right? So gender is a concept that transcends biological sex. It even, is related to, these functions can happen in single-celled organisms that have no biological sex, right? So, like, it's just a principle. Magnets, right? Gender,
North and south.
right? So it's still like it's very similar. But as far as regeneration, and creation, like a battery has negative and positive terminals, but let's say the plug, you could say, is the male and the female receptacle, because it's talking about a cycle of generation and regeneration, right? So you have the unmanifest and the manifest, and it's in a cycle, or the
Is it something related
object and the subject.
to like the G in Freemasonry, like generic, like to
Yeah.
create?
It's essentially the generative principle. That's very interesting you say that, because I think that is, like, I agree with Mark when he said that's the most occulted one, because that's what binds them all together. It's like that equilibrium, that harmony, because the generative principle, like, it's the manifestation, or the perfect expression of all of the seemingly opposites.
It's in balance.
Yeah. Like, you have to care it. Let's say you create something, and in order to maintain it, it's a hard one to express, but basically, like, when you look at it like through the ancient mythologies, they would say like there was like this primordial chaos, and then there was like a creator. So you have like the feminine like primordial ocean, and then you have like a masculine ray of light, but then that ray of light casts a shadow, and then they interplay and they actually reverse. So then the female becomes the active emotions, and then the masculine becomes the solidified matter. So it's almost like wave particle, and when you look at the black and white squares on the checkerboard, okay, you could be manifestation and potential. It doesn't always have to be good and evil in every context. It could be like where the pendulum is at rest. It doesn't have It's not active, but it's at rest, meaning, but what is that? They could say, oh, that's masculine because it's tangible, but but when it's in motion, it's more like feminine. So they're literally just phases.
That I have to say, I wrote down a while ago pendulum because it's the same thing overlaid, and whether or not it's swinging from whatever, but usually it is that balancing act within the middle, which is so fascinating that you came up with the pendulum thing as well.
And about the checkerboard,
didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, excellent.
is the checkerboard like to remind myself? Is it like base consciousness, or
it can represent that if you're stuck in strict a dialectical mindset. It can be. That's where we start out. We like when we're kids or when we're growing up, we have like, this is good, this is bad, this is what I was told is right, this is what I was told is wrong, and also like being stuck in a dualistic mindset, like
duality.
Yeah, it can totally be that, but duality of what, right? Because not all duality is bad.
Yeah.
Like you can lie to yourself and think everything is all one and perfect, and what is that? That's nonsense.
Yeah.
Also, there was like episodes where like Mark talked about like what is like what's the hidden meaning of police, like eyes, like polarized, right? Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like they're the good guys, and like law, legal, illegal. I mean, it really is like when you're more,
and
their
lights are red and blue. It's supposed to like represent like two polarized ends of the light spectrum, but also to have some imbalance between the.
Yeah, and it's a false dialectic. Like, you have to do what they say. They don't have to do what you say. I mean, it's all of that. And that's what I said, where polarity is the one that's maximally used by the dark occultists, by a Republican Democrat, right? Like democracy, dictatorship, like, bro, like communism and Nazism. That's like a fake ass dialectic.
Yeah.
But it works though. Like you voted for a party and your guys win. Guess what? Guess who wins every election? Government.
That's a guaranteed. That's how it's rigged.
I saw like on Instagram, there is a vegan straight edge profile, and they put a anarchism symbol, and underneath the hammer and the
oh my god,
sickle.
What the fuck? Come on, like,
right? That's anarcho-communism. It's like literally not it, but that's how they wanna neuter anarchism by equating the two. Like so you're gonna get the worst people
flag together.
Yeah. I know. Antifa's like that too. Black bloc, fake ass anarchists. Like anarchy means throwing a brick through a Starbucks window and stealing stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's breaking stereotypes.
I'd written down something else, and I'm not sure if it applies here because so many kind of blend over one another. The I and the me. I is masculine and me is feminine. So there's another.
Yeah.
Wow.
But did you just come up with that conceptually?
No.
I and me, like, I mean, I and me. That's agent or nominative and direct object. But yes, you're right, because me is the recipient of an action and I is the agent or the doer of an action.
Right. And so the feminine.
I am, but it happened to me. Okay.
Right.
So what
Exactly.
if the masculine? So I know that in the feminine, the me is the feminine and it's what you become. Well, what is the The I is the masculine, and is it what you are? And then the feminine is, and that could come back to your nouns that you were talking about in language.
Me, myself, and I.
Yeah, it's not strictly grammatical gender, but conceptually, you're talking about something that's acting versus something that is acted upon. So, or give and receive, for example.
The I is the most high.
Sure.
Yeah.
Ital is vital.
They're vital, yeah. And yeah, it's different than grammatical gender, but conceptually, I can't think of a better Hermetic principle to put it under. I or me, because that would be like to I, me, agent, agere, the verb to do in Latin, hacer in Spanish, the agent, the nominative, the name, and then the recipient. I mean, yeah, it just comes back down to active or passive.
And it also comes down to self-control and self-regulation in that way.
Right. You can
Latin in school?
No, I spend a lot of time just reading stuff on different languages.
I wish they hammered Latin in our school, but yeah, it would be really useful. Yeah.
I wish it was. It wasn't an option, so I took German and Spanish.
Sick. Based.
But yeah, I mean, like all of the, what we call like, the toxic masculine or the unholy feminine, like, for example, women have been told to like resent the role of a mother as something like degrading or whatever, and nothing could be further from the truth, dude. That's the future. That's the future. And then people go by that because that's what they're told when they're young. And then they're like 30, 35 years old and they're freaking depressed because they're like, I don't have a family. I don't love my career. I don't go home and think about my career, and they were like told that they needed to be masculine, whereas like their masculinity could be expressed as like strength and self-discipline while raising children. And then men could express their feminine qualities by like not being a dick, by having some empathy.
Wow.
Based.
I'm sure we could go over this again, and each time we would find it nuance.
Well, there's like a chapter, a deeper chapter on each one of these that we'll probably do in a round 2.
Yeah, this is just surface level, like summary of each of them. Yeah, there's chapters that, like you said, dive in deeper to each one of these as well. Which, so we'll be reviewing all of these again.
How awesome it would be if somebody made a TV show about these things, right? Imagine,
TV. Who watches TV anymore?
Not a TV show, but like
we have a TV show about this. That's what we do.
We are the TV show.
You know what I mean? Like with actors and like
this is reality TV.
Episode 1, like first season is about this kind of knowledge, and the second season
like a story instead of a podcast.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Like a story instead of a podcast.
We might have we might have to get some costumes, Ariane,
Yeah.
and learn how to edit some stuff.
You are the director of theater. And
Get
since
yourself a
Oh,
green.
don't
a
give that
green
boy any
screen.
hydrogen.
I
Uh-oh.
caught this dude
No.
sniffing hydrogen.
Oh no! Oh boy!
Oh shit! I caught Ariane. He was doing some hydrogen out back in the alley. Yeah, getting polarized.
That's hilarious.
Nah, don't worry, everything is under control.
All right, next episode is mental transmutation.
Okay.
Chapter
Chapter
3.
Yeah.
That might be not this next week, but the week after that. After we're going to do the podcast next week, so it'll probably be a week or two after that.
Excuse, I blurred one anecdotal thing with the other. I didn't know we were fencing it.
That's offensive.
I'm offended.
Oh, who's this?
Whatever.
Julian, mate.
Oh, what's up, Jules, mate?
Hey,
What up, mate?
Jules.
What's
A
up?
resident ringer.
Good shit. What's happening, guys? You figured it out yet?
We're figuring it all out over here, man.
One page
Done
at a
and
time.
dusted.
Dunning Team Kruger force in the house.
What time is it there, Jules?
2:07 p.m. 19th to the 5th, 2025. Same year for you.
Yeah.
Last I checked.
Yep.
Uh-oh, look out. Arian's huffing that hydrogen.
That's hydrogen mask on.
So for Arian, it's about what 6:37 in the morning. We've all got different times.
Yeah.
It's like 12:30 here.
Ariane, that mask, is that like ancestral
go.
thing? Animism, bro.
Animism.
Uh,
Oh, that was very animistic, Alicia, for you to be saying sorry to all the animals.
It was just serendipitous. Like I was like having this moment, and I know it's kind of it might sound whacked, but like I did, and it's funny because if they come back as parasites, I could say I did try and say
Yeah.
sorry.
Maverick, Elisa says she's sorry. Woo woo. Can I get a
Come back
woo
as
woo?
butt parasites.
You're exempt from vegan jail, vegan hell.
It was just interesting.
Shit, no
I think
bongs on
there's
the
a difference when there is.
Oh,
He says he forgives you, Alicia.
Oh, thank you.
Good boy.
And
Oh,
on
Look at that snoot.
that theme, it was interesting because I read somewhere, I think it was today, and it's like, vegans get a bad rap, and I'm not going down a rabbit hole here, but it's like the people say, well, when did you become a vegan? And I think they were saying that the opposite could be why did you choose to eat meat? The interesting part about that, and I know I'm digressing a little bit because it had to do with the animals and apology, right? But like is that decision was made for people by their parents when the food was put in front of them. So they didn't consciously make that choice. They inherited a habit and a way of thinking and being. So they never had that choice.
Libertarians do not like it when I tell that to them. Because libertarians are all about, it's my right and my choice. And it's like, well, you had meat and dairy forced on you when you were too young to have a choice. How do you know that this is something you want to do? No.
Well, if you truly know what a right is, it's a right action, and it's not a right action.
Yeah.
The cosmic
No
brats.
way to kill.
The cosmic brats who are offended by the concept of morality.
But then to that end, when people are in the throes of a habit and or an addiction of that, it's not everywhere or often that they'll be interrupted by this messaging that says, hey, you could give this a thought, and review at what you're doing, because they've normalized it and they don't realize. And I was one of those people for a long, long, long time. It's just I'm not going down a rabbit hole, but we talked about apologizing to animals, and then that just nipped that Poor Jules has come into this conversation.
I know he's come in right at the end.
No, that's okay.
I'm
I
like-
tuned in probably about maybe an hour ago. I just sat there quietly, didn't say anything.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I've been in the chat. I've just been watching.
Yeah, I saw you. I
quietly.
saw you. Was it interesting?
Yeah. I was listening, learning. I don't think gravity's part of the Kybalion though. More density. Yeah.
Interesting. Or it
really
could be
cool.
it could be vibration. It could be a rhythm. Rhythm is a dancer. Oh, that's
yeah,
2.5
that is
hours. That's longer than I thought we were gonna go.
Mm-hmm.
That was fun. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
real fun.
Thank
Great
you.
material, great conversation.
Thanks for showing up, Jules, too.
Yeah, thanks for being in
Yeah.
the chat, Jules.
That's the color. Your background color has gone from like really light now to pitch black.
Oh, I'm in my car outside,
Yeah, I
so
know.
it's nighttime now.
I know it flowed with the we
Yeah.
started when it was light and now it's completely dark there.
That is those are polarized things,
Yeah.
light and dark.
Light and dark.
Yes.
All right.
Jeff is being very polarizing right now.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Catch you on the next
All
one.
right, everyone. See you Sunday. And then next Sunday after, we'll be doing more of the Kybalion.
Sunday fun day.
Thanks
Yeah.
for creating the space. Bye.
Peace.
All right. See you later, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.